Hello my lovelies and welcome back to Lauren Levels Up. Today I have for you this full face, full glam tutorial based on Shay Mitchell's gorgeous makeup style. This is perfect for those of us who have deep set eyes as I do, or hooded eyes like Shay does. These are both gorgeous eye shapes, but as you'll see from the pictures that I'm about to show you, here you can see Shay's hooded eye shape as it is normally. She often goes about her makeup in a way that really opens up that eye shape, so that's exactly what we're going to try to achieve today. I will leave a link to all of the different products that I've used in the info box below. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and please stay tuned to see how I got this look. So as always with me, because we are going for an eyeshadow look today, I am going to be starting with eyes before I go on to skin, hence where you guys are quite so up close and personal at the moment. I have primed my eyes using the Urban Decay primer potion first of all, and I did set that. I know some people would say that you don't have to or you're not supposed to. I just find that my shadows tend to blend better if I do set that down with a translucent powder first. So first of all, I am going to take my W7 in the Buff palette, and it has in it this very bright shimmery, it has a slight pink tone to it, but I would just say it's a generally bright iridescent shade. So I'm going to first of all apply that with my finger to get the most colour payoff across the whole of the lid space to really brighten up that lid. With my finger, just building the colour up slowly and bringing it right up into the crease of the eye. And I'm paying particular attention to the centre of the crease above where my pupil is, because from what I can tell, she generally likes to draw attention to this area to bring it forwards. Next up, I am going to be taking a neutral brown colour, and the best that I could find was actually my Bahama Mama bronzer. So if you have a bronzer in a neutral shade, that will work great, and just a small fluffy eyeshadow brush like this one, or any neutral brown eyeshadow will work too. Remember, we want to create that almost like a dome shape that comes up here right up to the eyebrow. So I'm going to start mapping that out by pressing the brush with my eye open rather than my eye closed, just to create the shape. And I notice that it does generally come right in here into the inner corner of the eye as well. And now that I've got the shape mapped out, because I've stamped the colour on, I'm just very lightly using the same brush, just going to start working it in, blending it out so that it doesn't look quite so harsh. And what we've got is the effect of a shadow. Just going to continue that now using a clean brush because I don't want to add any product. All I want to do is diffuse it. And because I still want to keep it in a relatively localized area, the area that we applied it, I'm not using big swiping movements like I normally would to create that crease colour. I'm keeping it really concentrated. At this point, I want to deepen up that crease that we created. So I'm going to go in with a slightly darker brown colour, and I think I'm going to use the one from my Too Faced Chocolate Bar palette. And there's a colour here called Semi Sweet, which is quite a neutral brown colour again, but it's a shade darker than what we've been using. And I'm going to use a smaller brush, this is kind of a fluffy pencil brush. Just going to dip into that colour. Have a little look at where we applied that first colour. Again with my eyes open. And just start in the centre of where we applied that colour, deepening it up to make it look again more like a shadow. Taking it again right into that inner corner. then when I get to the outer corners of my eyes, because we're trying to create that dome shape to the eye, I'm actually going to bring this darker colour slightly more towards the natural crease of my eye. And this is just going to add to that slightly different shape that we created. Again, just very, very tiny movements. Back in with the same brush that we applied the first colour with, and I'm just going to go ahead and softly blend those two colours together. Now, Shay does tend to have more of a smokiness towards the outer corner of the lash lines. So I'm going to go back in with that small brush that we used and an even darker chocolate brown colour. This is Triple Fudge from the Chocolate Bar palette. And I'm just going to take that along the outer third of that upper lash line. Now, because we've applied those darker shades, we've started to lose a little bit of the brightness of that first shade that we applied. So all I'm going to do is go back in with it on my finger and concentrating it in the centre of the eye again. Just press that back on to add some of that intensity back and also take it up just into the centre of the crease again. And then just back in again with that first brush, just to make sure again that everything is blending out nicely and there's no harsh lines anywhere. So now we want to go ahead and add further smokiness to that upper lash line. So I'm going to go in with a thin angled brush and use the black shade from my W7 palette, but any black shade will do. I'm just going to dip into that and then wipe the excess off on the back of my hand, close my eye, and then just start to stamp that along the whole lash line. From outer corner right the way to the inner corner. And then when I get to this outer corner, I'm making the shadow slightly thicker to lift the eye. And then I'm also just going to lift it up into a tiny little wing to elongate. And again, to help lift the eye. Now, in every single one of Shay's looks that I've seen, there is pretty much always a bit of smokiness going on that lower lash line, which is what we're going to do right now. So I'm going to go back into that lightest, almost eye contour shade that we used, the bronzer, back in with my little pencil brush, and I'm just going to take that underneath the eye, and this is the shade that's going to come the furthest down. It's really just there as a transition shade on the lower lash line, so bring some of that up into the top shadow as well. And for me personally, because I have quite round eyes, I'm going to bring this, you see in this inner corner here, I'm just going to draw a straight line because I want to try and make the eyes look less round. So drawing a straight line between the very corner and where my lower lashes start will just help to achieve that. At which point I'm then going to go in with that dark brown colour that we used to deepen the crease, and we're going to do exactly the same thing on the lower lashes, but we're going to stay closer to the lashes themselves this time with that darker colour. So you can see now that despite the shape of my own eye, and despite the fact that the crease of my own eye is here, we've created the optical illusion of that crease being higher up here, just by creating light and shadow. So I have just been and done a really quick cleanup of any shadow fallout from underneath my eyes, and we're going to go ahead and do our base now, and we'll come back to eyes a little bit later to finish everything. So to prep my skin, I am using the Becca Backlight Priming Filter, which is always, hands down for me now, a favourite when it comes to creating a really glowy base. So I'm just using one pump of that and smoothing it on all over. Always for me, there has to be a little bit of green colour corrector, particularly on my nose, which tends to go red at any available opportunity. So I've just dotted a little bit of my Laura Geller colour corrector, and I'm just going to pat that in. I should say, actually, for any of you who are not familiar with colour correctors, I can do a separate video on how to use these, but they basically neutralize any colours that we don't want in the face. So the colour corrector that I'm using right now is green because I want to neutralize any areas of redness before I go ahead and put my foundation on. So I'm basically just dotting this all over. Before blending it away with a sponge. Now, it's not often that I cream contour, but I did say that this was going to be a full glam look, so why not? Let's go for it. I got hold of recently some samples of the Milk Makeup Flex Foundation Stick. When I tried it out as a foundation, I wasn't too keen on it, if I'm honest, just because I found it too slippy, if that makes any sense for my skin type. But I thought maybe it would work pretty well as a nice blendable contour shade. So I'm going to use a mixture of medium tan and deep, which are basically two shades that are darker than my own natural skin tone, but that have neutral undertones that are going to mimic natural shadow really, really well. See how they come out as a contour shade for me. So, took a little bit of work to get everything blended in, but I think that's more just because I'm not used to cream contouring that much anymore, but I think I pretty much like that as a contour shade. So next I want to work on highlighting, and as usual, Tarte Shape Tape for me. And first to go on is going to be Fair Neutral. With a little bit of light medium sand mixed in under my eyes just to give it a slight more yellow tone. And because Shay has a very angular face and I don't particularly, I am going to take this all the way out up to my hairline, just very, very thinly, but just to create a more angular face. It looks a little bit crazy right now, I know, but don't worry, we are going to make sure that everything is blended. Whatever's left on the sponge, I'm actually going to take underneath that contour just to sharpen it up and make sure that it doesn't look muddy at all. And then with the foundation end, just go over all of the edges to make sure everything is nice and blended. So now that we have all of those cream products in place, it's time to set them down with a powder. For the areas that I highlighted, I'm going to use my Hourglass Veil Translucent Setting Powder. I'm going to be tipping some of that into the lid of the container, popping some of it onto my damp beauty blender, and then I'll just go ahead and push this into those areas to set them, and because of the tone of the powder, it will also help to brighten them. To set the areas that I cream contoured, I'm going to use my Bahama Mama bronzer again, just because it's in a nice neutral shade. Just going to take that on a brush and keep it inside the areas that we added that cream contour product to. Shay's blush tends to stay within the realm of a bronzy nude with sometimes a slightly rosy tone to it. So I'm going to use my Old Faithful Revolution Sugar and Spice palette, and I think I'm going to use a mixture of these two shades, and I might include some of my bronzer in there as well if it's not looking bronze enough. And then for highlighter, I will use my Urban Decay Afterglow highlighting palette. And again, Shay tends to stick within the realms of those really golden shades. So I'm going to, I think, use a mixture of Bliss and Side Piece, which are both really, really golden shades. And just pop that onto the high points of my face. Onto the tip of the nose, just to lift it slightly, the bridge of the nose, a little bit above the brows, and on my Cupid's bow. I'm then going to take a clean brush and using the same shades from that palette, I'm going to pop a little bit of that highlighter into the very inner corner of my eye. As I've noticed, again, this is something else that features in Shay's makeup quite a lot, is a nicely highlighted inner corner. And I think I might actually take the lightest of those shades and just also highlight the highest point of my brow bone. It's going to help us to lift that area. Now, Shay's brows are generally a little bit more defined than my own brows would be. So basically what I'm going to do is take quite a dark brown brow powder. So I'm going to use the Barry M Chisel Cheeks contour palette, but there is a very, very dark neutral brown shade in there. I'm basically going to work on creating a more defined brow that is very lifted from the underneath, if that makes any sense. So we're not going to take too much makeup underneath the brow because we want it to sit slightly higher. So first thing I'm going to do is lift that as high as I can by placing the product ever so slightly outside the natural hair growth, but not too much because we don't want it to look totally unnatural. And then her brows have a very, very soft arch, so I'm not going to draw straight down here, just in a very kind of swept over shape as opposed to anything really, really strongly arched. And then from underneath, I'm not going to start right from this inner corner because that could look too harsh, but a little bit further back, and just start off by drawing a straight line gently up into where the arch of my brow is, and then fill in the gaps. And whatever's left on my brush, I will then take that into the start of the brow, brushing upwards to make things look a bit more natural at that point. So now that we have our base makeup on, it's probably a good time to go back to eyes so that we can try and balance out how everything is looking, make sure the eyes are looking perfect now that we've put the base makeup around the eyes, because it might just need a little bit more blending here and there. So the first thing I'm going to do is check how things are looking on either side. And I can see, for example, here we need to do a little bit more blending to get everything to blend out into that base makeup now that we've put it on top. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take a little bit of that darker shade that we put into the crease and just make it a little bit more intense in the inner and outer corners, because we've lost some of that intensity when we put the rest of the makeup on. Just visually, sometimes when you get the rest of your makeup on your face, it can look a little bit like your eye makeup disappears from the intensity than what you thought it was once you get the context of everything else on your face. That's looking nice and carved out to me. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take that slightly bigger brush and blend out those edges. So I am going to pop on some mascara, and as usual I'm going to curl my lashes first, but I'm not going to curl them loads because it can sometimes make putting lashes on a little bit difficult. So a very, very quick curl on both sides. Before I go in with my Too Faced Better Than Sex waterproof. A little bit on those lower lashes from what I can tell. Shay is a fan of a fair bit of lower lash mascara, so I'm going to go ahead and bulk those up a bit. For lips, you almost always see Shay in a nude, whether it's a very pale nude or a sort of deeper brown toned nude, which I thought is what I would go for today, just as something a little bit different. So to start off with, I have my Kiko Milano. I can't even read what that says because I've used this so much. I think it's Matte Fusion lip pencil in the shade 533, which is just a neutral brown colour. So I'm going to outline the whole of my lips and fill them in with this first. The lipstick that I'm going to be using is from number 7, and it is in the shade number 10 Bare, which is their Stay Perfect range. So I went ahead and added some false lashes to this look. These are the Ardell Demi Wispies. I know, I always use them, but I genuinely looked at the picture that was my reference picture, and they genuinely did seem to be the right fluffy style of lash for the look that we're going for. So that's why I've used them. I promise I will try and fall in love with some other lashes for you guys at some point. So whilst I was doing that, I also decided that I wasn't 100% about the lip colour. I think it was a little bit too dark. So I think what I might do is just add more of a pale nude to the centre. This is the Kiko Milano lipstick in the shade, let's see, 326 Velvet Passion. So I'm just going to add some of that just to the centre. And then I think a little bit of a nude toned gloss. And this one is the High Shine Lip Treatment from the Body Shop, which is another old favourite of mine. And I just find that patting on a gloss helps to blend in any separate colours that you've used and blend in your lipstick with the lip liner as well. So this, my friends, brings us to the end of this Shay Mitchell inspired full face tutorial. I really hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. It genuinely is a relatively easy eyeshadow technique that is fantastic for hooded eyes or for deep set eyes, as I do have. And as I mentioned at the start, there's nothing wrong with any of these natural eye shapes. It's just a case of all of us wanting to make the best of naturally what we do already have. Please don't forget that if you enjoyed this today to like, comment and subscribe. I really do appreciate your support. But for now, I will see you again in the near future in my very next video.